As you may know, recently the federal government asked to file protective orders against some of the witnesses that were going to testify or had testified against Luigi Mangione in the grand jury proceedings to get an indictment against Luigi Mangione. Many people have asked, what does this mean? What it meant was the federal government said they were fearful for some witnesses' lives if their names were to be revealed. And so they were asking the judge to seal or give a protective order so that they didn't have to reveal who the witnesses were that were testifying against Luigi Mangione. The question becomes, what is the government afraid of? There's a theory out there that I have posed that if Luigi Mangione was involved in this situation, he may have had accomplices. I had a long form video called The Game Theory that suggested that Luigi Mangione could have been involved with a group of conspirators who basically did a shuffle in Central Park. The shooter goes into Central Park, goes off camera, disappears for a while. A different person comes out of Central Park. The feds all follow, or the law enforcement all follows that individual, thinking that that's the same person who rode into the park. But according to the official first documentary on Luigi Mangione, they lost they lost the shooter. We don't know that that was Luigi Mangione, my bad. They lost the shooter for quite some time in Central Park. They later found a backpack full of Monopoly money. This is a hint that there is a game afoot. Monopoly money. There was a hint on Luigi Mangione's profile page on X that there was the Pokemon, the 286 reference, I believe was the number. It was a denial of claims code. All these hidden languages in gaming references. And then there's the whole Mark Rosario. Remember the driver's license that Luigi Mangione allegedly presented to law enforcement. Mark Rosario sounds a lot like Mario. And so I've posed many videos, for example, on TikTok and also on YouTube in my long form video called The Game Theory, that Luigi Mangione could have conspired with a group of so-called gamers to leave Easter eggs like the Monopoly money, like Mario and Luigi and Pokemon references, gaming references to indicate that there was a group of conspirators. And I've also made references to the movie and the book, but particularly the movie, How to Blow Up a Pipeline, which was about a group of individuals who could work together and agreed that one of them would take the fall so that the rest of them could go on the loose. So now go to this theory one step further. The federal government is fearful for the lives of witnesses. We speculate that the reason being is that they're afraid that fans of Luigi Mangione, that just fans of Luigi Mangione, may put witnesses' lives in danger because people love Luigi so much out there in the public. But what if in the game theory analogy, and this is just a theory, again, 100% a theory. Also, I want to state one more time, Luigi Mangione is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. I'm not saying that Luigi Mangione is involved in this shooting at all. But if he was, and if it plays along the game theory, could it be that the federal government knows that there's an accomplice of Luigi Mangione on the loose still? They have hinted in a previous documentary that at this time, we believe Luigi Mangione acted alone. I'm reading between the lines saying that the government may have actually believed at some point that Luigi Mangione had accomplices. You also remember him on the cell phone, the shooter, him, not Luigi, the shooter was on a cell phone right before the shooting. Who was he calling? I've joked many times or said tongue-in-cheek, he wasn't calling in a pizza. He wasn't getting a phone call from a friend when he's about to carry out what he's about to do. He has bigger things on his mind. That phone call alone indicates there's a conspirator involved. He was working with somebody. Now, some have said, oh, he was just doing social engineering. He might have called the lobby to find out if Brian Thompson's on the way out. No hotel tells that kind of information, but maybe it could have been a social engineering thing. Or it could have been, as I suggested, that the shooter had an accomplice. That shooter was on the phone with somebody who was on the inside, who knew when Brian Thompson was going to be coming out of the hotel, was letting him know Brian Thompson was on the way, or that he had a little bit of extra time. Whatever the case is, that phone call, amongst many other things, like for example, the shooter stayed at a hostel with other roommates who are now out in the wind. We don't know a lot about the roommates. Could it have been that the roommates were also accomplices? Were there a group of people all dressed similarly, leading law enforcement in different directions all over the city? There was a Law and Order episode, for example, that showed the idea that people were dressing up like the shooter to throw law enforcement off. What if that was planned ahead of time? What if there were multiple people dressed up like the shooter so that the shooter could go free? If that's the case, if there's another accomplice, and if the shooter is actually on the loose, that maybe, and again, in the game theory, Luigi Mangione, in my game theories that I've posted so far, was player 2. Mario's player 1. So we would allegedly say in the game theory, Mario, player 1, is on the loose and in the wind still. Luigi Mangione, he's player 2. Luigi was always player 2. In the Mario Brothers thing, it's Mario player 1, Luigi player 2. So Luigi player 2 takes the fall, like the premise of How to Blow Up a Pipeline, where a group of young individuals agreed to conduct some kind of eco-terrorism in the movie, How to Blow Up a Pipeline. And these individuals conspired and then agreed that one of them was going to take the fall for the group of them, so that the rest of them would be free, potentially to do what they were going to do again. So, does law enforcement or the feds potentially know or suspect that there's an accomplice in the wind still? Maybe even the shooter is in the wind still, and that Luigi was an accomplice, but maybe not the actual shooter. And if the actual shooter is in the wind still, could it explain why the federal government says witnesses' lives are in danger? Because if the shooter is still on the loose and Luigi's an accomplice, could it be that the shooter will threaten the lives of witnesses and make sure that they can't testify? So this is a mob tactic, right? We've seen it in movies. It also plays out in real life. The mob has notoriously been known to silence witnesses through intimidation or murder. So if there was accomplices involved in this kind of situation, and if there's accomplices out there and they want to make sure witnesses don't testify, you could understand why the federal government would be like, we can't tell you who the witnesses are, because witnesses' lives are in danger. If there's an accomplice out there, they would be terrified of that accomplice taking out witnesses. So really the question becomes, is the federal government asking for protective orders because they're afraid of the fans and the public? Or is it because they know or suspect there's an accomplice in the wind, and that accomplice may come after the witnesses once the witnesses have been identified, or may intimidate or coerce them? Again, for the record, this is 100% theory speculation. I can't state this enough. No part of this is to be considered factual. It is food for thought. I would love to hear your thoughts and your comments about the possibility of the game theory. If you need a primer on my game theory, please watch. I'll put a link at the end of this video to the original Devil's Briefcase episode called The Game Theory, where I lay out that a group of gamers may have conspired to do this act against Brian Thompson, and may have laid gaming Easter eggs all throughout the event to throw off law enforcement and to place hints into the public eye about what's going on. The game is afoot. So, once again, we don't know 100% about the protective order. First of all, as of the time of this airing of this video, the federal government had until April 10th. It is April 12th that I'm making this video. April 10th was the deadline that the judge had requested, that the federal government needed to request those protective orders for witnesses. And whether or not that was done or not hasn't been made publicly available at this moment. So as of the moment of this video, I do not know if the federal government did file any protective orders for those witnesses. But once again, is the federal government suggesting that witnesses' lives are in danger because there's an accomplice, or they suspect there's an accomplice in the wind, and they're afraid if that accomplice finds out who the witnesses are, that witnesses could be tampered with or eliminated? And if that's the case, what does that mean for Luigi Mangione? Does it mean he wouldn't be the shooter because the shooter's actually still on the loose? Does it mean that he may not have actually been involved at all? All of these questions are good food for thought. So leave a comment if you have your own theories about the game theory and about that protective order.